There we go. Now we're recording. My screen did a little something goofy. Hi, everybody. Diana here at Heartfelt Creative. Welcome to the video for the Spinning Wheel Dresden Table Runner Workshop, Layered Table Runner Workshop. You'll have to excuse my voice a little bit because I've got a cold. I don't want to say it's a cold. I don't feel like I have a cold, but I just have all this head stuff going on. So if I have to take a drink of water or something, please excuse me. So this is the sample that you've all seen of the layered spinning wheel Dresden. And so in this video, I'm going to take you through how to make the Dresden, how to make the small center layered Dresden, and we're going to talk about how to border it, how to put your three pieces together. And if you have any questions at all, once you've seen the video, please contact me either at hearfeltcreativeinfo@gmail.com or contact me at Heartfelt Creative with Diana on Facebook via private message. You can contact me via private message if you want. Excuse me. Whatever works for you, okay? So let's go ahead and just get started. You should have all received an email with a handout like this. You can either print it out or look at it on your laptop or your iPad, whatever you like to do there. The front of it starts at the bottom, starts with the cut list or the fabric list. When I say WOF with the fabric, that's just standard in quilting. If you've already done quilting and all, you know that. But if you're new, WOF, width of fabric. Now, here's where we had a little bit of concern in the actual live workshop. The width of fabric that I used was 44 inches. The width of fabric that some folks had was only 42. And I hadn't thought about that. Standard width of fabric used to be 42. And then it changed to 44. And I'm not sure that it's changed for everyone, everywhere. I'm not sure that every designer has changed or that every country carries with the fabric at 44 inches. So if you don't have a 44-inch width, that's fine. 42 will work. We're just going to add, you're going to have like a third colorway in each wheel to make up for a couple of extra pieces, because on one strip set of 44 inches, you should be able to get all 20 of your blades. And we'll talk about that more as we go. But if you have a 42-inch, you're probably only going to get 18. So we'll talk about that more as we start cutting, but I wanted to put that up out front because I hadn't even thought about it in the live workshop. And people were like, I can't get all of my blades out of one strip set. We'll fix that, okay? So no worries at all. So on here, we're going to have you create 6 strip sets. And you're going to wonder why 6, and that is because we're going to be doing our borders with our strip sets, and you'll see how that goes. You can use a jelly roll. A jelly roll might actually help a little bit because it'll be easier to mix. You can mix and match any of the fabrics in the jelly roll and they'll all work together. So you won't need to worry about that so much. Or you can use 3 specific colors throughout the whole thing, like I've done in the sample. You'll see that. You are also going to need, now on your paper, it says 1 2.5 by width of strip, contrasting fabric for your mini plate. Will you please put a 3 there? You're going to need 3 strips because you're going to need to make a mini plate for each Dresden. And there's 3 in this project. When I was putting this together, it was kind of late one night and I just thought, oh yeah, you need 1 for that, because I was looking at the one piece and forgot to times that one out a little bit. My bad. Sorry about that. And you're going to need 3 20.5 by 20.5 inch squares of fabric for your background. Let's talk about the background fabric a little bit. I'm going to suggest that you use a lighter fabric so that your Dresden pops out. Now, if lighter fabrics, white really isn't my thing. This is a sample that I did for a shop that they had to hang up so people could see it, and they wanted it on a white background. That's fine by me. But if white is not your thing, like it isn't mine, just use something. I'm going to recommend something lighter. Pull a lighter color. So like in this Dresden, I have lots of blues in here, really light blues and medium blues and dark blues. So I suggest that so that your pattern shows up. However, if you're doing jewel tones and you want your background to be a dark color, even a black, that will work fine with darker colors too. This is truly fabric-wise what you will enjoy. I'm just going to give you some ideas. Okay, thread, let's just discuss that real briefly. I always use a piecing thread, which is a light dove gray or a fill. It's called Dove. That's what I use to piece everything with. Just use a good neutral cotton thread. I highly recommend 100% cotton. If all you have available is an all-purpose thread, feel free to go ahead and use it. The kind of idea is that thread that is the same fiber as the fabric they work better together, because cotton will shrink, polyester doesn't. So if you use a polyester thread and a cotton fabric and you go to wash it, you could end up getting some puckers and things like that. But I've seen plenty of people use polyester thread on cotton and it's turned out beautifully. So I don't want you to be worried about that. I'm just going to suggest if you have it, use 100% cotton. For your top stitching thread, which you will need when we apply the Dresden to the background fabric, because this is really kind of a big applique that you're making, I'm going to suggest that you just go into your fabrics and you find a color that works really well with this. Let me show you. Let me grab mine that I'm using. So for my thread, for my wheels, I chose this color. And it really just blends in. When I quilt with it, it blends into everything really beautifully. Now, if you want the trim, the stitching on the outside of your wheel to really pop out, then by all means, choose a color that's going to contrast and really give you some visual appeal that way. That's entirely up to you as well. But you will need to, I don't recommend that you piece with your top thread, your top stitching thread. I find it a little bit of a waste. You never see it. So that's why I use the Dove Gray Orifel. Again, that's up to you. If all you have is what you're going to use for your top stitching, use it for everything then. It's up to you. You're also going to need about 1/2 to 2/3 of a yard for binding. And if you use a jelly roll for your plates, use what's left in your jelly roll, connect them, and use those for your binding. It'll look great. It'll be like a patchy binding. It'll look scrappy binding. It'll look great. Backing and fabric and your wadding or batting, as we say in the US, should be about 3 or 4 inches larger than your overall piece once it's pieced together. I know some folks say you can get away with 2 inches. When you're doing a big applique thing like this is, I think 2 inches is not quite enough for a large project. If you start to get any shift in there, 2 inches isn't going to give you much room to recover that on the edges if you have to. But a 3 or 4 inch will give you plenty. All right. Okay. So that's just the general information in the instructions that I gave you in the cut sheet. In there was also a template pattern as well. What you should do on this, let me just flip my camera here for a moment. Now I've got a switch box now, finally, which helps me with a lot of stuff. but it makes me still go through my cycle through my cameras. I can't choose which camera I want to use. I think I still have to have another piece of equipment, so we're working on it, but the box I have now, the button box, as I call it, lets me do a lot of things so much easier. So on your template, you're going to see a little square that says 1 inch by 1 inch reference box. What you should do is take a ruler, tape measure, whatever, and your box, a 1 inch by 1 inch mark on your box should fit right over the top of that. If this box is bigger than 1 inch by 1 inch or quite a bit smaller than 1 inch by 1 inch, you need to reprint this template, and you should print it out at actual size, not fill the page or any of the other options that you might have, but actual size, because that will make a difference in this. Okay? So what you're going to need to do is just take scissors and cut it out. And I'm going to show you when we get to that point how you can use the paper template to make all of your blades. However, if you've done Dresdens before and you like doing Dresdens, you can use a standard 18-degree, that's the important part, 18-degree Dresden. It needs to be at least 6.5 inches wide at the top, 1 inch wide at the bottom. That's standard. An 8-inch high, this is a pretty standard acrylic template. And you are welcome to use that if you have it. If you have any Dresden, that will give you a 1 inch at the bottom and a 6.5 inch. You can use it. Like I have this Dresden. This one, gosh, it's so long, I can't even get the whole thing in here. It is 10 inches. So you can make some really lovely, beautiful Dresdens with this one. And I like the color of this one. It's yellow, so I can see it on top of my fabrics a little easier sometimes than I can see my clear one. So that's why I liked this one. You can get Dresden templates in all kinds of sizes. I actually have one that is almost 2 foot long. It makes huge Dresdens. So they come in all kinds of sizes, but you want one that's at least going to give you 6.5 inches in height. And that usually comes on an 8-inch high one. Okay. Let me flip the camera back again to the front. So those are the main kind of tools. Plus your sewing machine, obviously in good working condition. You should know how to set your sewing machine for zigzag. So you should have a foot on your machine that allows you to zigzag. It'll have the wider. Let me grab one from the box over here, and I'll show it to you. So like this one, you can see here, it'll go back and forth there. You want one like that. So like that one's clear. Your machine may have a letter. That one would work. Your machine may have a letter that tells you what foot to use for your zigzag. That's what you want to use. What you don't want to use is one that has a single hole like that. Now that's fine for just stitching the plates together, but when we go to apply it to the background fabric, that's when we're going to need a zigzag. And so this one is just up and down. So if you have a single hole like that, you need to change the foot on your sewing machine. And usually a zigzag foot, obviously you can go up, you can do it for general stitching as well. But like this one that I just showed you, that's my 1/4 inch foot. So I use this one almost all the time. And then when I go, let me tell you how many needles I've broken because I've forgotten to switch over to my zigzag foot. Now you might be wondering, just as a side note, why I have this one that's clear. It allows me to see everything through it. So I find it nice when I'm trying to guide things and stuff. It's not required for this at all, just a general zigzag foot is all you're gonna need. All right, let's put that back. All righty, so rotary cutter, I use a standard 45 degree. If you have a a 28, or even, well, a 60 might be a little big, but you could still use it. A 28 would be fine. A 28 looks like that. I love this one for like going around curves and stuff. Alrighty. And then a general acrylic template for cutting. I use one that's 3 by 12. You might have one that's 6 by 12, something like that. You may, if you are cutting your strips, want to use a big long one for cutting the initial strips. I use that one occasionally for that, but a lot of times I'll just do a light fold and cut them with my smaller one. Anyway, so those are the kinds of things we're going to need today. All righty, so let's talk about, let me flip my cameras again. There we go. Let's talk about our strip sets, shall we? So I love using strip sets. Let me try to adjust my camera a little bit. I get it tightened, but it always wants to unwiggle or unscrew itself from the attachment point. And can I just say, that irritates me. Oh, you also need an iron and a pressing mat or an ironing board, something like that as well. And we will be using that a lot for making our Dresden blades. So if you have your iron and pressing mat or iron and ironing board, you might as well turn your iron on now. So we're going to talk about our strip set that we're going to make. And you can use, like I said, 3 fabrics like I have here. In general, a light, a medium, and a dark works really well. You could use 2 patterns in a solid, 2 solids in a pattern, all solids, whatever you like. And the one nice thing about working with jelly rolls is you have all of those fabrics that work together, so you can mix and match them however you want. All you're going to do with this is sew the 3 strips together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Throughout this entire project, the only seam allowance that you need to worry about is 1/4 inch. So you don't have to wonder, oh, was I supposed to change this or something? 1/4 inch works for everything on this project. So yeah, so I've got mine pressed to the dark fabric. I won't go into whether you do a press to the dark or whether you press your seams open. That's a conversation for another day. I'm just going to suggest that you press to the darker fabrics. And once you get everything nice and pressed, I will say this, that a lot of people I know like to give their fabric a spray with like a spray alternative, a starch alternative, like Best Press, or there's tons of other brands. I also use one that comes from the grocery store called Magic Sizing, because when your fabric has a little bit of I don't want to say stiffness, because I don't want you to think it's so stiff that you can't move it, because see, it isn't. But when it's been pressed with a spray, it keeps it kind of just stiff enough for your fabric not to do a lot of like this kind of thing while you're trying to cut. So you might think about doing that to your strip sets if you like. You could also just use water if you wanted to. It won't do quite the same thing as a starch alternative, but that's what I would use. I don't use regular starch. Again, that's my preference. But any of the starch alternatives will work fine. Alrighty, so you're going to put together 6 strip sets. Now, if you're using the same 3 colors, and if you do, then you're going to end up with your pieces looking like mine do here, where I have a solid ring in the center, and I have an alternating ring in the small part of the small ring, and the outer pointed ring is also alternating colors. If you have, let's keep this back here for a minute. If you cannot get all 20 blades out of one strip set, and you have to incorporate blades from a second strip set that isn't the same fabric, then what I suggest is you do this. You either do 3 strip sets and you go one from one strip, one from a second, one from a third, and go all the way around. Now that's going to give you a different look, because this center, if it's not the same fabric, is going to be different, but that'll be fine. It'll still look wonderful. Or you could do 1, 2 from this strip set and a third one from another strip set. 1, 2 from this one and a third one from another one. So you can, all I'm saying is you can play with the layout to get your 3 Dresden plates together if you cannot get all 20 cut from one strip set. And I do apologize about that, because you may have 42-inch wide fabric rather than 44. In fact, a lot of folks in the workshop had 42-inch because they don't get 44-inch where they live. So, and that I didn't know. It was an honest mistake in that respect. So let's go back to our strip set real quick. The one thing you want to do is on every strip set, you want your lightest color in the middle, then a medium or a dark on the side, or you may be going with 1 light and 2 darks, but the darks are different. That's fine too. Okay. So, but you want that same one in the middle. If you can, like I said when we were showing it here, if you can't get all of them out of one strip set for one plate, you'll know that every third one you'll have a different plate. That's just going to give you kind of another secondary interesting design within this. So it'll look great. Just kind of make sure that your colors, and like I said, if you're using a jelly roll, it'll be fine. As long as your colors all kind of work well together, it'll look beautiful. I've made them like that before. So don't worry about that if that is what happens. So now what we want to do is we want to talk about cutting our Dresden blades, because that's making the Dresdens are going to be what's going to take the most time. You need 20 full-size Dresden, 6.5-inch tall Dresden blades for each Dresden plate. Okay, so in total, you're going to want 60 blades. Now, with the template that I sent you, if you don't have an acrylic one, which is fine, I'm going to show you how to use this one without getting it all nicked up right away. So what you want to do is you want to start where you have a straight long edge here, or this is the short edge, I guess, right here. You want to line up your Dresden template at the bottom on the 1-inch side, not up here at the 6.5-inch point. Okay, so every time you line this up, line it up here or down here at the bottom on the 1-inch. So I'm going to get this lined up, and if you'll notice, my strip set hits right at 6.5 because I've used a 1/4 inch, 2.5-inch strips, and a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now you could try to hold it and cut it, and let me just tell you, you're going to end up cutting into the paper, or you could draw a line and then cut them all out, and that will take you a while to do that. Or you can take your quilting ruler, place it on your template. So you're really using this as your cutting template. You're just using the paper to give you your angle. So hold it down. That's your scrap. You can put that in the bin. And when you lift it, now you have your starting angle for your first Dresden. So you need to leave it. Now I'm going to put mine right back because you need this first one, you leave it just as is. And then you come over. Now this might be a little difficult. Like I'm left-handed, so I'm going to have to make this cut. If you have a rotating mat, that would be a good time to use this one. I forgot to get mine out. So I'm going to go very slowly so that I don't go off and cut my fingers. When I remove that, now I have, just snip that. There we go. I have my first Dresden blade. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. But now, as you can see, we have an angle, but it's going in the opposite direction. So from this time forward, I flip my fabric because I'm a lefty. I'm going to line up my blade template. Line up. Now, if you have an acrylic template, of course, you're just laying it down each time. But I'm going to show you this with the paper one more time. I'm going to come over here. I've got it all laid down so that none of the paper is outside the template. Make my cut. And there's my next blade. Now look at the difference. One has a light top, one has a blue top. The reason is because for our next one, we're going to flip our Dresden. So now the 1 inch is up here and the 6.5 inch is towards me. And you're going to do that with every cut. You're going to flip. I'm going to take to using this one now. You're going to flip your template. So I've got that lined up. There's my next one. Now I'm going to flip my blade again. So now the 1 inch is facing me. I'll line it up. Okay. There's my next one. Now I'm going to take it and literally flip it like this. Don't flip it like this. Don't flip it from front to back. Flip it from top to bottom. Okay? And you're going to keep cutting your strip set out until you have nice stacks, 20 for each blade or for each plate, and you need 60 blades in total because you're going to make 3 plates, and you're going to have your stacks right there. That will take you a few minutes. So if you want to at this time, you can pause the video and go ahead and cut your Dresden blades out. And then in a few minutes, when you're ready, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so you should have all your blades cut now. What we're going to do now is actually start the sewing process. Doesn't matter what order you do them. Just, you need to get all 60 of them sewn in this first step, the same exact way. Pull my chair out here. Okay, so what you need to do is take one blade, and you can just pile these up because this is a good time to just do like an assembly line sewing kind of thing. You want to take your blade and you want to fold it at the top. You don't need to worry about all of this. All you need to worry about is the top. Fold it right sides together, just like that. Okay. If you want to give it a little finger press, you can. It's not really worth taking the time to physically press it with your iron at this point. You're just going to put it like this. Let me change my cameras. There we go. Now we're at the sewing machine. And we are going to sew these at a 1/4 inch. Oh, let's see. Move my hand here a little bit. We're going to sew these right at a 1/4 inch from top to bottom. Now, I have a walking foot on my machine, but I know where my 1/4 inch mark is on this foot. So if you want to use your walking foot and you know how to line up your 1/4 inch, that's great. I always put my speed at about half speed. Okay, I've got one done. Ooh, move my iron out of the way a little bit. So now I'm going to take my second one and fold it the same exact way. There we go. Lift up my presser foot, line it up. And I'm just going to keep sewing my blades together in this manner until I've got all 60 of them sewn this way. Now we'll go back to the main camera. Okay. And you're going to have, now I've only got a few because I only did 3 for you to show you, but you're going to have a big long line of all these blades. Just take your little snips and snip them apart. Doesn't matter what order they fall in, anything like that. At this point, the order of them doesn't matter to us. Now, the one thing I am going to tell you now is that when we go to flip and turn and press these, I like to take my snips and do one tiny angle cut there and one tiny angle cut there. You don't have to do it, but what I find is if with those 2 little angle cuts, it reduces the bulk when you turn these. And now I'm going to show you how to turn them, but I'm going to get my, move that camera over. I'm going to bring my pressing mat over. I've got a small pressing mat and my little iron. So let me flip the camera again. I don't know what you're going to see. Yeah, okay, because I moved that camera. There we go. Here we go. So once you have snipped all your little angle cuts, you can do it one at a time as you go or all at once. It's entirely up to you. The one thing about Dresden's, if you do everything all at the same time, it's kind of yeah, I guess assembly line is what I would say. So now here we have our Dresden. And it kind of looks, to me, it kind of looks like a canoe right here, right? So if this was done that way too, you'd have like this little canoe boat there. So what you want to do is place your thumb, just a second, I need to trim the threads off on that one. Place your thumb right in there. Then take your index finger and fold the little seam allowance, fold that right to the side and flip it inside out. Okay. Now, if you have a pokey tool, that's what I call them, a pokey tool. Use something that's either got a round ball on the end or that is blunt on the end. I don't recommend that you use a knitting needle with this because trust me when I tell you that knitting needle is going to pop through that point every time. And I've done this enough to know that, yes, it does. And you don't need to really go in there and give it some welly either. You just need to go in there and just kind of help shape that point a little bit. And I just lay it against my finger so that it reminds me not to push hard through the point. Okay, so now all you're going to do is lay it flat. You can give it a little finger press if you want. And you just want to make sure that you're relatively even on both sides. Some folks just come in, slap it down and do it, and they end up with their things like this and all. That's going to cause you problems later on when you go up to line up your blades. So just kind of hold it there. And you don't want to do a lot of back and forth. Just give it a good solid press with your iron. And if you want to press it from the other side, you can. It's not necessary, but you can if you want to. And there you have one blade flipped and turned and pressed. Let's do that again. Here's our next one. Let me get my little threads off of here. Okay, good. So here we have our little, I've already done my little angled cut. So here we have our little canoe. My thumb goes here. My index finger folds that little seam allowance to the side, flip and turn. Then I'm going to take my little pokey tool and just gently maneuver that point out. And I suggest you take a little time as you do these because you do want them to look pretty even. You don't want your points to be all like off because then you're not going to get a good lineup later on. Let me show you what I mean. So here's our third one. I'm going to flip and turn it. I'm going to do a gentle poke out of that corner. So now let's say that I thought I laid it down good and I only have my finger over here and this side's kind of up and I slide my iron on there. See how that is not even like that one is? See how it's kind of goes up over here? I really need to take and repress this one because look at how funny that looks from the front. This side is really long, this side is short when you really want them to look the same on both sides. So I want to repress this one. And it's pretty easy. You just kind of take your time and I always come into the press from the top. That way you are less likely to do that sliding to the side. Okay, you want to go ahead and do that with all 60 of your blades. Okay. Now I know that's a lot of blades, so take your time. If you need to pause right now and come back in a little bit, that's fine too. You can rewind and back up and all that kind of stuff. When you're ready though, we'll move on now to actually putting our Dresden plate together. So let me show you one completed. Here's my completed Dresden, one of my plates. And you might think initially that you just start on one blade and keep adding them on and working your way around. And if you do that, you're going to end up with a really kind of a cattywampus circle. It's just the nature of the fabric and the threads and all of your seams that it's just not going to want to lay right for you. So this Dresden has 20 blades. So if you divide it into 4 quadrants, like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to have 5 blades in each quadrant. So basically 20 divided by 5 gives you 4. That's how we come up with that. That's pretty easy math. So what we want to do is we want to lay our blades out in what we call Dresden fans. And a fan has 5 blades. And I'm going to alternate my tops, light blue, dark blue, light blue, dark blue, light blue. Okay, but I have to remember that I'm working on a circle. So that's like 1 quadrant right there, right? But as I keep going in my circle, I want these to continue to go dark light, like that. So I want to make sure that my next fan starts in the middle with a dark blade because I want the dark blade to come next. So there's a dark one. There, whoops. There's a light one. There's another light one. There's a dark one. And there's a dark one. And that becomes this quadrant, or it could become this quadrant, either way. So now I need to make one more that starts with a light color, because this one is dark, right? This one is dark. I want my next one to be light. So I need to start one that has a light center, dark on each side, and then light on each side of that. And that's my third quadrant. And over here, I want this one to start with a dark middle, a light on each side, a dark one here. Let's rotate that a little bit, and a dark one here. Now I've got my whole thing laid out. I know it all goes in the right order. And now I just kind of push my quadrants away from each other a little bit. So I remember that I'm going to stitch these into fans, not into one big circle. So I'm going to bring my camera back over. We're going to start on one quadrant, one fan, okay? So what I like to do is I like to start attaching to my, I'm actually gonna, oh, what did she do? Yeah, I just got rid of all of them. What I want to do is I want to start and stitch this one to this, and this one to this, and then this one to this, and this one to this. So basically start in the middle and have them work inward. It will help to make everything lay a little nicer for you in the end, rather than just putting them all together. I mean, you could put them all together, but I find this way works a little bit. So what I want to do is I'm going to separate these three out a little, and I'm going to start with these two. So this is my center one, and this is the one next to it. And I'm just going to take this one and fold it right on top of the other one. Now, this is the important part of the whole thing. You don't need to worry about lining up your bottom ends. What you need to worry about, or what you need to be concerned with, is lining up the point of the fold right here with the point of the fold right here. That way, when you turn it open, well, you'll see once we sew it. But you want to make sure and line up right there and right there, okay? Again, we're going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's go over to our other camera, to the sewing machine. There we go. So I'm going to get my 2 plates in here, or my 2 blades. Line it up. Now again, here is where I say I stay at half speed on mine. If this were a solid Dresden blade, where this was all one piece of fabric, you could do it faster. But on this one, on the spinning wheel Dresden, we have a lot of little seams in here from our strip sets being sewn together. And so I say start and don't go over a medium speed, because it will help you to make sure that you keep your seams going in the right direction and that they won't start flipping up and over on you. And you just follow that line. So if you can see, it looks like your Dresden is going out at an angle, and it kind of is, but you're keeping the edge right on your 1/4 inch. Okay. All right. I'm going to snip off my strings. Now I'm going to bring this camera. Let's see if I can do this. Oh yeah, I can. Good. Okay. So we've got our little pressing mat and all here. I use a product. Now, I should tell you that I am not being supported in any way by any of these products. These are just things I use. So I might as well tell you about them if it makes your sewing easier. So right here we have our piece sewn together. Here is our new seam. I use a product called Precision Piecing Products. It's a pen that looks like a marker on the end. You fill it with this liquid that it comes with. It comes with a bottle, and you fill this pen, and all you do is lightly trace down your seam line with it. And I think you can even get replacement tips if you need them. And what it does when you flip this now to press it, it is going to give you the nicest, flattest seam. Now, I will admit that I am a gadgety person. I love gadgets. But I resisted this pen for a long time. I thought, no, I'm just, whatever. I'm just going to use my best press or my spray alternative, which is fine. You can do that too, for sure. But look at how nice and flat that seam is. I mean, it really works well. And so, you know, I think you can order this from Amazon. I know here in the States that a local shop, thimblesquilts.com, they carry it sometimes. It's not overly expensive. And boy, like when you're doing half square triangles and quarter square triangles, this has just become my best friend. That's all I want to say about that. But you might, if you don't have that, you don't intend to buy it, which is fine, just spray your seam when you're flipping, just to kind of help you get a nice flat seam there, okay? So now we have two blades together. Now I'm going to grab the other one that has the light blue, and I'm going to attach it to this side. Okay, so let's bring the camera back over to the bed of the sewing machine. I didn't do that as smoothly as I thought I would. Okay. Let's see here. There we go, that's better. So now I'm going to take, I've got my two blades. I'm going to take this blade, flip it over onto the darker one. Again, I don't care about lining up down here. I'm going to make sure that my points right there are nice and lined up. Then bring it over to my sewing machine, line up on my 1/4 inch. Make sure I'm staying nice and lined up. Snip off my little edges, or my little strings, threads. Okie dokie, let's move back down over to the pressing mat. So once again, so what I would do if you don't have the precision, I would just give that a little spray and flip and give it a good press. Now, if you use spray, you're going to probably need to press a little bit more because you'll probably get more than just the seam wet. And you'll want to make sure it's nice and flat and dry. Okay. And there we have 3 of our blades together. And we're going to do that now with all of our fan pieces. So to continue this, I would add this one on, then I would add that one on. Set it aside. Then do your next 3 fans. And when you do that, you're going to take and sew this quadrant fan and this quadrant fan together, and this quadrant fan and this quadrant fan together. You're just going to attach them. So let's say this is part of this quadrant right here, and let's say this one is part of this quadrant right here. We're just going to take the two quadrants, fold it over on top, line up our points, and sew the two quadrants together, just like you were adding another single fan. Same thing as we've been doing. And then what I do is I fold one half over on top of the other half. So one seam here, and then come around and sew the last seam here. And then you have a Dresden. And you're going to notice something. And I don't want you to freak out or think, oh, what have I done? What do I need to unstitch? Why isn't this laying flat? I'm going to get my large pressing mat up here for you. You're going to see this look all kind of wibbly in here, kind of just all like that. And you're going to go, oh, I can't get it to lay flat. What's going on? No need to worry. Flip it over on your ironing surface. And now I am a steamer. Some quilters steam, some quilters don't. I think steam works beautifully. What also works good is your pressing spray. You don't need to do it all out in here, but you want to get your center. You want to give it a really good little spray there. And then you want to, and with steam, in my opinion, steam does it best. And I use my big iron when I do this instead of just this little one. But you just come around and press down and give it a really good press. And what happens, kind of literally like magic, what happens is that all of your seams, see how these two have come together over those, and these two have come together. They all kind of like accordion themselves in together and lay flat. And then when you flip it over, you have a beautiful flat Dresden. So all of that little wibbliness will come out once you give it a good press. And I truly, truly suggest you use steam. You can, if you need to spray it with water, I would even suggest that even over the best press or an alternative starch, okay? And then you're going to do that for all 60 blades that you've made. You're going to make 3 lovely big Dresdens. And then you can set those aside. Now, I've asked you to have 3, let me just press this a little bit, 3 2.5-inch strips. For your smaller Dresden plates, of which we're going to make 3. But instead of 20 blades for these small ones, we only need 16, I believe. Let me double check. 1, 16. You only need 16 of these small blades. How are you going to do those? Well, it's pretty simple. You've got your 2.5-inch strips. Hang on, I need to press that again. I just got that nice and flat, and it popped right back up on me. There we go. There, that's better. So now I've got mine folded, so I'm technically cutting 2 at a time. If it makes you nervous to cut 2 at a time, just unfold your strip and cut 1 at a time. I'm going to clean up my edge there. Okay. Now, if we bring our template back in, you'll notice that if we put our 1-inch bottom right on the edge again and come up, it's only going to come up to 2.5 inches. And so you want to cut 2.5-inch Dresdens using that same Dresden template. So I'll use the yellow one this time. That way you can kind of see it better. So I do it the same way. I come over here, a little bit of, now I have to leave mine. This is the left-handed business. Well, you'll have to do this too, but instead of cutting the second with your right hand, you'll cut it with your left, or use a rotating mat. I have rotating mats. I use them all the time, and I forever am forgetting to get them out. All right, so now I have two, because mine are folded over. I'm going to flip my fabric going in the other direction now. Line up at the bottom. Cut my next two. Flip my Dresden upside down. And keep going. And I need 16 Dresdens for 3 Dresden plates. So 16 and 16 is 32 and 16 is 48. So you're going to need 48 of these. Now, I suggest that you make them something that coordinates with the fabric. Make them all in one that coordinates with each of your Dresden plates. Now, this one isn't the one I'm actually going to use on here because I originally chose that, and then when I put that on here, I thought, oh, that sinks in a little bit too much for me. So I'm probably going to end up using that one, which is the fabric from here. But you're going to make 3 of these. Now, we're going to make these the same way we made the large ones, in quadrants. So again, so now you have 16 blades. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. So you're going to make your fans in 4 blade increments. Okay. Each one of these centers can be a different fabric on each one of your Dresdens if you want it to be. So once you have, again, you might have, this might be a little wibbly when it's done. Same thing, turn it over, give it a little spray or good steam and steam it flat, and it'll come out beautifully for you. Okay. Once you have all of those, basically 6 Dresdens, 3 large and 3 small, done, then we are ready to start appliquing that to our backing pieces. I've asked you to have, this is a sample, the back of a sample. Please don't pay attention to these lines, but do pay attention to these lines. So you have 3 pieces, 20.5 by 20.5. I want you to take it and fold it this way, make a little mark at the bottom and at the top, and then fold it this way and mark it side and side. And then when you unfold it, you could use any, because you could slide this, but sliding tends to make my lines go weird. So I've just used a soft number 2 pencil here. You could use heat erasable pen if you wanted. I didn't want to use pen on this white fabric, but I just line up my points at the top of the bottom, make sure they're in the center, and I made myself a set of crosshair lines. Just makes it a little easier when I'm lining up my Dresdens. So start with my first one, and I want to lay my Dresden out. You should get Dresden on each point and a Dresden on each point at the top and the bottom. Now they might not be right on that line, that's fine, but they'll line up pretty well. Once that's down and you've decided that you like the layout, you need to attach this to this fabric, it kind of in a temporary way so that you can go and do the permanent sewing. In the olden days, and what some people may do now even, is they would do safety pins, do like 7 or 8 safety pins on here. I find safety pins allows for too much wiggle room for this. So what I suggest is that you either use some glue basted, like a white craft glue, put a little, what you could do is put a little, like a dot or 2 on each of the points and get it down, put maybe a few around, stick it down. Or the best thing I think is some sort of temporary adhesive fabric spray. Spray and bond, Create and Craft has one, Stick and Stay or whatever it's called. 505 is a really good one. June Taylor has one. Whatever you use already, and it should just be temporary, okay? And I know that some folks don't like using the spray on their fabrics, but I've been quilting for 55 years, and I was so happy when they came out with this for basting. The temporary, I've checked it out. It's not going to hurt your fabrics, and it's going to make the whole basting process easier. I don't do a huge amount, just a light spray. I usually take mine just right outside to spray it, or I spray it in the garage in the winter a little bit. But you want to make sure that you're in a room with some ventilation at least. I wouldn't do it around your laptop. I wouldn't do it around your sewing machine where any overspray would get on things. But you're going to take it and just give a little light spray. Okay, it doesn't have to be heavy at all. And then flip it back over. And because it's temporary, it's going to allow you to adjust, get everything lined up how you want, and then just give it a good hand press, and that adhesive will bond right onto there. That's going to allow you to take this to your sewing machine. Now's when you want to set your sewing machine for zigzag. Now, you could use a blanket stitch. If you're a stitcher and you like using blanket stitch for applique, you could use a blanket stitch. I prefer a zigzag for Dresden's because the zigzag has that up and down points, so it kind of is similar to this idea, right? So that's why I use it. And I'm just not typically a big fan of the blanket stitch, but that's me. You can certainly do what you like. But you're going to take it to your machine, and you're going to start just off of one point. So don't start up here, start right off. And you're going to bring your needle down right to the outside, and then you're going to start your zigzagging. When you get down to here, you're going to want to pivot, lift your foot, pivot, and come down here. And you're going to do that all the way around. I'm not going to sew this on here, onto this because it's a sample and this is going into a quilt. But all you need to do, so whenever you get down to your inner or your outer area, make sure that you stop with the needle right to the inside on the plate, needle down, lift your presser foot, pivot your whole piece so that you're back kind of in a straight line again, and then start again, work your way down. You're going to do that all the way around the outer edge of each Dresden onto its own piece of fabric. That may take you a little while. Again, put your speed on your machine to a medium. Go slow. Be intentional with your stitches. Stop and start. Pivot. I'll show you I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to slip this camera over. There we go. back over to here. I'm going to show you what I mean, but I'm going to take my thread out. So I'm not actually sewing. Bobbin out. Now here is also where you would want to use your top thread that matches or coordinates with your pieces. So my sewing machine, let's put it up here a little bit. So I come over here, I'm going to set my machine to a zigzag. I'm going to set mine to a stitch length of 1 and a width, of 3. That's the size that I prefer when I stitch my Dresdens onto the backing fabrics. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to line up, I would have my fabric under here. I'm going to line up just off my point. I'll bring my foot down. And slowly I'm going to stitch down that edge until I get to my point. I'm in my point. I'm going to lift and pivot, put this down again, and then start come down to my point, stop right in that point, lift and pivot, and so on. And that's how you're going to do the sewing onto the backing fabric. Thought maybe if you actually saw it in there, that would be a little bit easier for you. Okay. And so when you're done with that, you'll have 3 full plated Dresdens on backing fabric. Now we want to come in with our mini Dresden, and we want to line it up here in the center. Now, there we go. Now, there's a couple of ways you can line this up. You can line it up with your points on the lines, on the seams, or you can line it up with the point following straight up. You can see that. The point following straight up to the point of the larger plate. Now, I will just tell you now, these little ones don't fall directly into the same place all the way around, and that is okay. All I do is kind of figure out with this first one, do I want it like this, where things are a little more off, or do I want them like this, where it's a little bit more straightforward? And I give you that choice because I just found out this like a week ago. I have a friend who cannot stand anything to be off-centered like that. I never knew that. I've known her for years now. I never knew that. I will never make her something with an off-centered piece again. But she likes it straight on with these kind of matching up as well as they can. Okay. Now, like I said, they're not going to match up exactly. You're going to get some that are on the line, but overall, this looks like a more straight on, and this looks a little bit more cattywampus, if you want to say it that way. All right, so what you want to do is get those laid on, and again, just give this a little stick on the back and put it on here. Take it back to your sewing machine, and once again, sew all the way around your outer points. And you'll want to make sure that it's nice and centered in there. Once you've done that to all 3, there's one more stitch that I recommend. And I recommend that you come in here, and you could even do this before you add the small Dresden. Come in here with a straight stitch this time, a straight stitch, just your average straight stitch, 2.5 inch stitch length is fine. And in this ditch, in this seam ditch, straight line all the way around. That will help keep the whole Dresden onto your backing more securely. Okay. So now you've done all the stitching. All of this is attached to your backing piece, right? Cool. One more thing you need to do. We need to cover up our little hole there. Now, what is traditional is just that, is a circle. I used a cap. I just took my piece, kind of a scrap fabric that I wanted that matched my pieces, put it in there, drew my circle around it, and then cut it out. You probably need like a 3x3 or so inch piece of fabric. And you can tell that's a scrap from an end because there's my salvage right there. So anything that you want that will cover. Now, my circle doesn't cover way out into here. If you want a larger circle out into here, you can make one that way. I tend to like them to just cover that because I want people to see my plate. So when you do this with a straight stitch again, I come in about, I don't do a full 1/4 inch on this. I will come in about 1/8 of an inch. Straight stitch it down all the way around. And then I clip these edges with my snips, not through the stitch line, but just tiny little snips all the way around. And I fluff that a little bit. And it kind of gives it a fluffy flower center look to it. You don't have to do that part. You can, if you like, use a satin stitch, which is your zigzag on a 0 stitch length, and come all the way around and satin stitch that down, or just zigzag it on with the same stitch length and width that you did all of this, and stitch it down that way, whatever you prefer. Now, if you don't like a circle, you could make yourself a little hexagon to go in there. You could make yourself a little triangle, I guess, to go in there. But the standard, the traditional, is that little circle. But you can use other shapes and ideas in that center if you want to give your plate a little bit different of a look. And then you have your 3 main squares done, and you're in the home stretch from here on out. Okay? So what we want to, let me just turn this one over so we can look at it better. Here's that shop. I have so many of these because I've taught this class in shops for years. And every time I go to a shop, they want a sample to hang in the shop, obviously, so people can see it. And so I did a few different things with this one. I even stitched down, as you can see, I did my zigzag all through here.
This is a reminder. Check notifications.
That's Alexa on my Amazon, sorry. I even stitched this,
No.
and that's what you are.
Album.
Alexa, stop. I shouldn't have said her name. So that's
a reminder. Check notifications. This is a reminder. Check notifications.
all right. I'm so sorry about that. So this is that dark line you're seeing through that other side. In the end, I didn't care for it horribly much, but you can do it that way. I mean, I do like it, but it was a lot of extra stitching. But as you can see, just zigzagged around all of it. Boy, I'm off on some of these too. Anyway, okay. But I just used a small circle here in the center, and I zigzagged around on that one as well. So this is from like, oh gosh, this must be 15 years ago, maybe I did this one. It's a long time ago. So you'll have 3 pieces like that. Now we want to make our borders. You can do this a couple of ways. You can put a border on this side and a border on this side, and then your square and your square that are done with this patchy look, and then do a solid border around the whole piece once it's all together, or you can do a scrappy border around the whole piece as well. If you go to my Facebook page, Sew in Common, it's a little group where you can just go and put your pictures of your projects and be encouraged. There's no selling and stuff like that on there. Just a place for you to feel comfortable and at home showing and asking questions, stuff like that. General civility rules apply, you know, no snarkiness, no that. The people on that group are just lovely people, so you won't find that there. But one of the gals that took this workshop recently has posted, actually two of them have posted, and the one did the scrappy on each side and a scrappy full border. So if you want to see what that looks like, go ahead and take a look. So let's talk about how we do our border. I've had you do all these strip sets, right? So you have some that are still, there we go, some that are still straight on the edge, and we haven't done any cutting on them yet. What you need is to cut 4 2.5-inch strips, just like that. Now, isn't that slick? Doesn't that look like you just spent forever? Wait till you see the whole border. It just looks like you've spent forever on it. You want to sew 4 of them together, end to end to end. So you want to make sure that here at the blue, your next one starts with the light side and so forth. And you want 4 of them stitched together for each side of this main block. So let's put this here so you can kind of see this edge. What you're going to do then is sew. Now, obviously, this is longer than this edge, but the reason it is because with that extra length, you can, let's see, can I make this? There we go. It's longer, but with that, you can line this up so that you get your ends to match up pretty well. So it's dark blue on that corner and dark blue on that corner and dark blue on that corner as well. If you unstitch the leftovers on each end, you probably would have enough to make a whole nother 4-piece patch if you sewed them back together. But you just want to flip it over, line it up how you like, flip it over and stitch it on 1/4 inch. Again, you might want to spray, flip it, give it another good press, sew off your ends. You're going to want to do that on each side. So you would come over and you would do it to the side. There we go. Oops, there we go. You would do it on the other side. Then you have a center block with a patched border on each side. Then on the other side of this, let's turn this like this, I think you can see it better. Then on this side, you want to attach your block like this, like your main panel. You want to attach one on this side. And then on this side over here, you want to attach your 3rd panel on this side. So you are going to have 3 panels like this pieced together with this border, or this sashing, I should say. This is a sashing at this point, in between each of the blocks. Then you're going to have your full top connected and pieced together. What you can decide to do, if you like, then is border the whole thing with this type of a strip piecing. Just measure your whole piece, And then cut yourself enough of these to do the whole 2 long sides and the 2 short sides. Sew them on just like you did the 2 center ones on here. And then your whole top is done and ready to be quilted. Now, if you don't have enough of your quilt strips like this left, you don't like that look for the outer border and you want to pick one fabric for your outer border, that's fine as well. You'll want 2.5-inch strips, whether you use the pieced border or a solid color border, you'll want 2.5-inch strips. Then when all of that is done, you want to make yourself your quilt sandwich. It's time to quilt this whole big piece. This is a large table runner. It could also be used on the back of a sofa, on a coffee table, anything like that. Because it is, I mean, it's 20, by the time you're done, it's 20 some odd inches wide. So what you want to do is now layer your top, then your batting, and underneath your batting, your backing fabric. And as I was going over with you at the beginning, you want 3 or 4 inches left out here, so that if this slides or moves or does anything funny on you, you've got plenty of room to recover that out here. Because after you've got it all quilted, then you'll come in and cut all that extra off, and then you'll do your binding. Let me bring this back around here. So now let's talk about quilting. Quilting, I know if you're new, you might be going, oh, what am I going to do with this? Well, remember, quilting is meant to hold your batting, your backing, and your top together. You could do a lot of really fancy, detailed free motion if that's your thing and you know how, you go for it. You might be going, no way, no how, not free motion is not my thing. That's okay. You could quilt inside each blade about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch even around each blade, kind of almost like in a Greek key, up, over, down, down, over, up, kind of that Greek key idea with a straight stitch. Set your straight stitch at a 3 or a 3.5 stitch length for your quilting. For your quilting thread, I always use something that sinks into the fabric. So I would probably use my piecing thread, which is dove gray on this. But you could use your top stitch fabric or thread if you want it to stand out more. That's cool. That would be perfectly fine. Or there's a part of this whole thing that kind of screams to me, quilt me, quilt me. And that's the center circle of the spinning wheel. So you could do your quilting this way. You could go up. With this, I'm going to recommend that you use a ruler. I'm going to take this piece off now. Take your ruler, use a pencil or a heat erasable pen. Don't use anything permanent. You could use chalk if you like chalk. I would recommend don't use anything but white chalk. And that's because I find that colored chalk sometimes leaves a stain. If you like colored chalk and you've never had a problem with it, you go for it. But make yourself a mark to here from the center out to the point. Bring it here and do that. And do that in all of these. And then you would have your quilting in here, and it would kind of match the idea of this point in the plate all the way around. That would be lovely. And once you've quilted this, and then what I would do probably with my little Dresden in here is I would probably not really do much quilting in here. I might do a little quilting in here, just like I would even like just do some doodles in here, kind of like the center of a flower is all kind of wiggly and doodly. You could do that. You could just do stitch in the ditch around this. That would be okay. But I really think this screams for some sort of a design. Now, maybe you don't want to do that geometric idea. Maybe you want to do a serpentine stitch, you know, a long S like a snake all the way around in here. That would be fine. That serpentine is going to be harder to do if you don't use a free motion foot, though. I'll just tell you that. You'll need to do a free motion foot for that. But for this type of a thing, or for the Greek key kind of a thing, you can use straight stitch on with your regular presser foot. I would use a walking foot, but you could use a regular pressing foot. This isn't horribly thick. Now, when we get out to here, what do I want to do there? Well, if you're a free motion person, you know you're going to go crazy out in here doing all your free motion stuff. It's going to be beautiful. But if free motion isn't your thing, you could do something that I call a halo effect. And that is, I would take my ruler and I would mark this. I'd come out about 1/2 inch and mark it all the way around here. Then I'd come out about another 1/2 inch to 1 inch and I'd mark it out. And I would keep marking that kind of, that follows this pattern all the way out into here. And that gives you kind of the idea of a halo, of a radiating halo. And I would do that in all 4 quadrants. Just got tongue-tied. So you would do that in all 4 quadrants. Or if you wanted to practice free motion out in here, that would be a great place to do it. The other thing you could do in this area, really specifically, if you are someone who has ever used quilting rulers, again, it is a technique that you must do with a free motion foot, but you'll understand these. I'm going to bring one ruler over. This is one of my many quilting rulers. Your free motion foot sits inside here. Now you have to have a free motion foot and you must use a quilting ruler. Don't let anyone tell you you can use a regular old ruler for this. These are too thin. Your foot will hop up onto this. It can break the foot, it can break the ruler, it can break your needle and your machine. You need to use something that is made to be used with a free motion foot. It's because a lot of free motion foots hop up and down, and you don't want them coming outside of this onto the acrylic and breaking things. But with this one is called a spinner, a spinifex. So if my finger is my quilting foot, I would hold this and I would, as I sew, I move this so that the foot moves around here and makes like a petal. And then I twist it. I do it again. I twist it and do it again. So it would make like a flower shape or a star shape or whatever I wanted. So that's what this one does. And there are hundreds of these out there by all kinds of different companies. Crafter's Companion, I believe, they don't call theirs quilting rulers. They call them shape things or some shape something or other, I think. But that's what they are. This one is from a company called Westerly Designs. Westerly, I believe Westerly Designs is actually based in Australia, the person who invented it. You can get them in the States through SewSteady, SEWsteady.com. So that's another way you could quilt your overall piece. If it really, really worries you, the quilting, again, do yourself some stitching in the ditch around your plate, and maybe maybe just follow your crosshairs. It wouldn't be a lot of quilting, but it would kind of give you a little geometric idea. That could be cute. I wouldn't have any heartburn with that. But play with your quilting. And then when you're all done, line everything up, cut off all of the extra fabric, and bind it. And your binding is going to be a traditional binding. I'm not going to show you. I think this piece is too big for a fold over binding. Fold over bindings, I have a technique that I will show, that I will do a little video on for fold over, because I don't do it in the traditional way, because the way I do it, I was taught by someone, gets the bulk out of your corners. And so a traditional binding, if you need help with that, let me know. But that is how you put your piece together. That's how you make your Dresdens. I hope that you enjoy making it. I'm sorry I missed you in the class. If you weren't able to join us, let me just say you were missed by everybody, because we always miss people that aren't able to attend, but we understand that that happens, right? Things come up and life happens. If you were with me in the workshop and you're rewatching this to make it a second time, good for you. That's great. I've seen some gorgeous ones out at Sew in Common. I love seeing them. Please share. Have fun. Remember, I'm always available for questions. I will, even if you need help figuring out the quilting and you want some one-on-one time with me, please let me know. I will just set up a little, like 30 minutes with just you and I. We'll get online and we can just talk about the quilting idea if you need that help. I'm not charging you for that at all. It just, if you need that kind of a help, I know sometimes it's better to see one another and see the project and that sort of thing. If you need help figuring out your colors, you can post pictures to Sew in Common and I can look at them and help you out that way. Anything you need, I'm here. I appreciate you all so much. You bring so much joy to my life. Getting to know you, helping you with your projects, seeing you succeed with your projects. I just love it. So go sew the world beautiful. I know you already have been, so continue. And I will see you next time. Hugs and kisses. Bye, everybody.